Namaste. Guruji. I'm really excited about today's topic. It feels so relevant, not just for exams, but, well, for everything we see and experience every day.
Namaste. Yes, it's a great choice. You're right. We hear the word environment all the time, don't we? On the news and papers, even elders talking about how things aren't what they used to be.
Exactly. But what does it actually mean scientifically? Especially for exams like CVSE, JG, NEET, even UPSC General Science.
That's the perfect question to start with. Beyond the everyday use, scientifically, our environment is about understanding this incredibly complex web of connections. It's foundational not just for Class 10 science, but also pops up in competitive exams like SSC, state PSCs, CDS, CAPF, pretty much everywhere in general science. So let's unpack this crucial topic, our environment, step by step. We'll make sure you grasp every key detail you need. Okay, so first things first, let's define environment in a scientific way. When we talk about our surroundings from a science perspective, we're really looking at a complex, interconnected system. And the core concept here, the one you absolutely need for exams, is the ecosystem. The definition you should remember is this: all the interacting organisms in an area, together with the non-living constituents of the environment, form an ecosystem.
Interacting organisms and non-living parts. Okay.
Exactly. That definition is key because it highlights two main components, two pillars, if you will. First, you have the biotic components. Think biolife. These are all the living things in that area.
Like plants and animals.
Precisely. Everything living, from the tiniest microorganisms like bacteria and fungi, you can't see them, but they're vital all the way up to, say, big banyan trees or rice plants in a paddy field. And of course, animals, insects buzzing around, maybe myna birds chirping, frogs in a pond after the rain. And yes, us, human beings too. The crucial part is they interact, they influence each other.
Right, they're not just there separately.
Exactly. Then the second pillar, the abiotic components. Abiotic means non-living. These are the physical factors.
Okay, like what? Sunlight, water.
Yes. Temperature, how hot or cold it is, rainfall, wind, the soil itself, which is full of minerals. These non-living things have a huge impact on the living ones, right? They affect growth, reproduction, everything.
Like needing the right temperature for crops to grow.
Perfect example. Farmers know this intimately. The soil type determines what grows, which affects the animals that eat those plants. It all connects. Let's make it really concrete. Think about a simple garden, maybe one you have at home.
Okay, yeah. We have some Tulsi marigolds.
Perfect. So in that garden, you have biotic components. The marigolds, the Tulsi plant, maybe some chili bushes. You'll also see animals, right? Insects like bees or butterflies, maybe a frog hiding somewhere, birds flying past. Those are also biotic, and they all interact. Bees pollinate the flowers, birds might eat insects, but their lives are totally shaped by the abiotic factors too. The amount of sunlight controls plant growth.
Photosynthesis, right?
Exactly. The soil quality, the water you give them, all abiotic. So even a simple garden fits the definition perfectly. Living and non-living parts interacting, it is an ecosystem.
Okay, that makes sense. Living, non-living, interacting.
Now, for exams, you need to know about two broad types of ecosystems. First, natural ecosystems. These are the ones that exist, well, naturally, without much human interference.
Like forests, or maybe a lake.
Precisely. Think of the huge forests in the Western Ghats, or a village pond, or Dal Lake in Kashmir. They run on their own natural cycles. Then you have human-made or artificial ecosystems. These are created and managed by us, humans.
Like the garden example, or crop fields.
Exactly. A big rice paddy in Punjab, or a wheat field in UP classic examples. We choose the plants, manage the water, add fertilizers. We control it for a purpose, usually for food.
So essentially, an ecosystem is like a mini world where everything, living or non-living, is connected. It's fascinating how we categorize them. But you mentioned human control. That makes me wonder, can you give another example of a human-made ecosystem that's a bit different from a garden? Maybe something that really highlights our control over it?
That's a really sharp question. Thinking about the degree of control, yes, a fantastic example, and one you might even have at home, is an aquarium.
Oh, right. Like a fish tank.
Exactly. It's a perfect example of a highly controlled, human-made ecosystem. Think about setting one up. What do you absolutely need?
Well, the tank itself for space. Water, obviously. Fish need to breathe, so. An oxygen pump.
Yes, an aerator or oxygen pump provides oxygen dissolved in the water.
Okay, food. Fish food from the shop.
Right. So you're providing the space, the medium, the oxygen, the food. Very controlled. But here's where it gets interesting regarding self-sustainability. If you just have fish and water, you'd have to clean it constantly, right? Waste builds up.
Yeah, it gets dirty fast.
But If you add a few aquatic plants, maybe some simple ones like Vallisneria and maybe some snails, it can become partially self-sustaining.
How does that work?
Well, the plants do photosynthesis. They use the carbon dioxide the fish breathe out.
And release oxygen, which the fish need.
Exactly. Plus, the plants absorb some fish waste as nutrients. And microorganisms, tiny bacteria, break down leftover food and waste too, recycling nutrients for the plants. The fish eat the plants or the food you provide. It's a mini cycle.
Wow, okay, little self-contained loop.
Kind of. But this leads to a really important conceptual question, the kind you might get in exams. If it can be self-sustaining, why do we still have to clean an aquarium periodically?
Good question.
And think about this. Do we have to go out and clean natural ponds or lakes in the same way?
No, not really. They seem to manage themselves. Why is that?
The difference is scale and biodiversity, especially of the decomposers. Natural ecosystems, like a lake, are huge. They have an immense variety and number of decomposers: bacteria, fungi, worms, tiny critters. They are incredibly efficient at breaking down all the waste produced, dead plants, dead animals, everything. They recycle it all back into simple nutrients that plants can use again. It's nature's perfect recycling system.
So they handle the load naturally.
Exactly. An aquarium, however, is tiny. It's a closed box. It has some decomposers, but nowhere near the numbers or variety needed to process all the waste the fish produce in that small space.
So the waste just builds up faster than it can be broken down.
Precisely. Without cleaning, the water becomes toxic. It highlights how powerful and efficient natural systems are compared to our small imitations. Biodiversity is key to that balance.
That makes a lot of sense. Scale and the cleanup crew, basically.
You got it. Now, we know what an ecosystem is. Let's look at the actors inside it, the roles organisms play. We group them based on how they get their food, their sustenance. This is super important for exams. 3 main groups: producers, consumers, decomposers.
Okay, producers, consumers, decomposers.
Let's start with producers, also called autotrophs. Auto means self. Troph means feeding. Self-feeders. These are the amazing organisms that make their own food, usually sugars and starches from simple inorganic stuff.
Using sunlight.
Yes, using the sun's energy through photosynthesis, thanks to that green pigment, chlorophyll. Think green plants from tiny algae to giant trees, and some bacteria can do it too. They are the base of everything. They capture the sun's energy and make it available for everyone else. Life depends on them.
The food makers. Got it.
Next up, consumers, also called heterotrophs. Hetero means other. They can't make their own food, so they get it by eating other organisms. They depend on producers directly or indirectly.
Okay, so they eat the producers or eat things that eat producers.
Exactly, and we need to classify them further for your exams. First, herbivores. These are the primary consumers. They eat plants directly.
Like cows eating grass. Or goats.
Perfect examples. Cows, goats, rabbits, deer, common herbivores in India. They're the first level of eaters. Then carnivores. Meat eaters. They eat other animals. We can subdivide them too. Small carnivores are secondary consumers. They eat herbivores.
Like a frog eating an insect. Or maybe a fox eating a rabbit.
Yes, or a snake eating a mouse. Then you have larger carnivores or tertiary consumers. They often eat the smaller carnivores.
So like a tiger, what would a tiger eat? A deer.
A tiger might eat a deer, which is a primary consumer, making the tiger technically a secondary consumer in that chain. But a tiger might also eat, say, a wild pig, which might have eaten smaller animals, putting the tiger at the tertiary level sometimes. Or think of an eagle catching a snake, which ate a mouse. The eagle is tertiary there.
Ah, okay. Depends on the specific chain.
Yeah.
Lions eating zebras would be.
Zebras are herbivores, so lions eating them would be secondary consumers. It gets complex fast. Then there are omnivores. They eat both plants and animals.
Like us humans, we eat veggies and meat.
Exactly. Humans are a prime example. Bears, too, they eat berries and fish. Crows are omnivores as well. And one more special category, parasites. They live on or inside another organism, the host, and get nutrients from it, usually harming the host.
Like lice or tapeworms?
Yes, exactly. Lice, tapeworms, leeches. They consume, but often without killing the host immediately because they depend on it.
Okay, that's a clear breakdown of the roles. Producers make food, consumers eat it in different ways, and parasites live off others.
What about decomposers?
Ah, yes, the vital third group. We touched on them with the aquarium.
Could you give a very simple, direct example of how all 3 producers, consumers, and decomposers interact in a small system? Like maybe for a competitive exam question asking for an application. What about a fallen tree in a forest? Excellent scenario. A fallen tree is perfect for illustrating the cycle. So imagine a big tree falls down. That dead tree is packed with organic matter made by the producer, the living tree itself, using sunlight.
Okay, so the tree is the producer's legacy, kind of.
Right. Now, consumers get involved. Insects like termites or beetles start munching on the wood and leaves. They are primary consumers here.
Eating the dead plant material.
Then maybe a woodpecker comes along and eats those insects. The woodpecker is a secondary consumer. But the really critical work is done by the decomposers, bacteria and fungi. They get to work on that fallen log. They release enzymes that break down the complex wood, bark, leaves, all the tough stuff.
Into simpler things.
Exactly. Into simple inorganic substances, nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, carbon. And where do those nutrients go?
Back into the soil.
Precisely. And then new plant saplings, grasses, can absorb those recycled nutrients through their roots and grow.
Completing the cycle. Producer trees, consumers, insects, birds, decomposers, fungi, bacteria, nutrients for new producers.
You've got it. That continuous cycle, driven by decomposers, is what keeps the whole forest ecosystem running. It prevents dead stuff from just piling up forever. Which brings us back squarely to the immense importance of decomposers, mainly bacteria and fungi. Think about that question again. What happens when organisms die? Or if you don't clean the aquarium? The decomposers are nature's cleanup crew and recyclers. They break down dead remains and waste products.
Turning complex stuff back into simple stuff.
Exactly. Simple inorganic substances that go back into the soil, water, air, ready for plants to use again. Nutrient cycling. Now, the thought experiment. What if decomposers vanished?
Oh, wow. Everything would just pile up. Dead leaves, dead animals.
Mountains of it. The whole planet would be buried in undecomposed organic matter.
And the nutrients would be locked up in all that dead stuff.
Precisely. Plants couldn't get the nutrients they need from the soil anymore.
So the producers would die out.
And then the consumers. The whole system collapses. No natural replenishment of the soil. Life becomes unsustainable.
So decomposers are absolutely essential. Not just garbage collectors, but nutrient providers too.
Couldn't have said it better myself. They keep the whole cycle of life turning. Okay, so we know the roles. Now let's track the energy. How does it move through the ecosystem? This leads us to food chains and food webs. Super important concepts. A food chain is basically a simple pathway showing who eats whom. It's a series of organisms where energy is transferred from one to the next as they feed on each other.
Like a line showing the energy flow.
Exactly. And the arrow always points in the direction the energy is going. Let's picture a couple examples. On land, you have grass, producer. A goat, primary consumer, eats the grass. Then a human, secondary consumer, eats the goat. Simple chain. Grass, goat, you, human.
Okay, easy up.
In a pond, tiny algae producers get eaten by small fish, primary consumers. Those small fish get eaten by larger fish, secondary consumers. And maybe a kingfisher bird, tertiary consumer, dives down and catches a large fish, chain. Algae, a small fish, a large fish, kingfisher.
Right, multiple steps.
Each of these steps or levels in the food chain is called a trophic level, from the Greek word trophy, meaning nourishment or food.
Trophic level, so like feeding level.
Exactly. It's how we group organisms based on where they are in the chain, how they get their energy. Let's map them out. First, trophic level, always the producers or autotrophs. Green plants, algae, they capture the initial solar energy, the base.
Grass, algae in our examples.
Right. Second trophic level, the herbivores or primary consumers, they eat the producers.
The goat, the small fish.
Correct. Third trophic level, small carnivores or secondary consumers, they eat the herbivores.
The human eating the goat in the first chain.
Yeah.
Or the large fish eating the small fish.
Yes. Or maybe a fox eating a rabbit. Fourth trophic level, larger carnivores or tertiary consumers, they eat the secondary consumers.
The kingfisher eating a large fish. Or maybe an eagle eating a snake that ate a mouse.
Perfect. Eagle is tertiary in that chain. You might sometimes have a fifth level, but usually it stops around here. We'll see why soon.
Okay, these levels make sense. But it makes me think, what if a food chain gets disturbed? Like if you remove one level, does it affect the whole chain? For example, what would happen if we just took out all the decomposers? We sort of touched on this, but thinking about ecosystem stability.
That's a fantastic question, and it really probes the interconnectedness. Yes, removing any trophic level can have massive ripple effects. It destabilizes the whole system. Let's take your decomposer example again. As we established, removing them would be catastrophic. Waste piles up, nutrients aren't recycled, producers can't grow, the whole system grinds to a halt. Utter collapse.
Okay, so decomposers are non-negotiable. What about other levels?
If you remove the producers, the first level, that's the absolute worst case scenario after decomposers. No energy entering the living system. Everything above them starves eventually. Complete ecosystem failure.
Like cut off the source.
If you remove the primary consumers, herbivores, the plants might initially boom, maybe even overgrow and get diseased, but the secondary and tertiary consumers lose their food source and would likely die off.
So the carnivores suffer.
Exactly. And if you remove the tertiary consumers, the top predators...
But the secondary consumers, the ones they eat, might explode in numbers.
Precisely, which could then lead to them overeating the primary consumers, causing their population to crash, which then impacts the producers. It creates an imbalance that cascades down. Top predators play a role in keeping populations in check.
Wow, so taking out any level causes damage, just maybe different kinds of damage.
That's the key takeaway for your exams. No trophic level can be removed without causing harm. The ecosystem relies on all its parts working together. It's all about interdependence. Now, we know energy flows through the chain. Let's look at how much energy actually makes it from one level to the next. This is fundamental. Food gives us energy, right?
Yeah.
Fuel for life. In an ecosystem, energy flows from producers to consumers to decomposers. But remember basic physics thermodynamics. When energy changes form, some is always lost, usually as heat. It just dissipates.
Right. Energy transformations aren't perfectly efficient.
Exactly. And studies on energy flow in ecosystems show two crucial things. First, the flow is unidirectional. One way. Energy from the sun captured by plants doesn't go back to the sun. Energy from a plant eaten by a herbivore doesn't go back to the plant.
It just keeps moving forward up the levels.
Yes, always forward, never backward, and diminishing as it goes. Which brings us to the second key point, the famous 10% law. This describes the energy loss at each transfer. The numbers are important here. Green plants, the producers, they only capture about 1% of the sunlight energy that actually hits their leaves and turn it into food energy. Just 1%.
Wow, only 1% of the available sunlight. That seems low.
It is, but that 1% powers almost all life. Now, when an herbivore, primary consumer, eats that plant, a lot of the plant's energy is lost. The herbivore uses energy just to live, breathing, moving, keeping warm. That's lost as heat. Some energy is used for digestion, some isn't even digested. Only a small fraction actually becomes part of the herbivore's body, its biomass. On average, only about 10% of the energy from the food eaten is converted into the consumer's own body mass and becomes available for the next trophic level.
Only 10% makes it to the next level, so 90% is lost at each step.
Roughly, yes. That 10% is the average value we use for calculations. That's the 10% law.
Okay, 1% captured by plants, then 10% transfer between levels.
And this has huge implications. Think about it. Why are food chains usually short? Only 3 or 4 steps.
Because the energy runs out. If you only pass on 10% each time, by the 4th or 5th level, there's hardly any energy left from the original amount.
Exactly. Not enough energy to support a stable population at higher levels. And it also explains the pyramid structure of ecosystems. Why are there always more producers than herbivores? More herbivores than carnivores?
Because you need a huge amount of energy at the bottom level to support the smaller amount of energy needed at the level above it. It takes lots of grass to feed one goat, lots of goats to feed one tiger, metaphorically.
Precisely. The number of individuals and the total biomass, living weight, generally decreases as you go up the trophic levels. You need a massive base to support the top. It's all about energy availability.
That 10% rule really dictates the whole structure. So if I eat a plant directly, I get more energy compared to eating a goat that ate the plant. That makes absolute sense from an energy transfer perspective. But does this 10% law have any implications for human populations and food security, especially in a country like India with such a large population? This sounds like a really good question for competitive exams linking science to society.
That's brilliant critical thinking. Yes, absolutely. You've hit on a hugely significant implication, perfect for exams like UPSC, where they expect you to connect science to real-world issues. You're spot on. Eating lower on the food chain is much more energy efficient. Let's use simple numbers. If a plant has 100 units of energy, a herbivore eating it gets about 10 units, 10% of 100. If a human eats that herbivore, the human gets about 1 unit, 10% of 10.
Okay.
But if the human eats the plant directly, they get the full 10 units, 10 times more energy from the same initial plant base.
Wow, that's a big difference.
Huge. Now think about India's large population and limited land resources. If we use land to grow crops, grains, pulses, vegetables that people eat directly,
We're accessing that first 10% transfer.
more efficient.
Much more efficient. That land can sustain a large number of people, But if we use that same land to grow feed for animals and then eat the animals, we lose 90% when the plant becomes animal feed and another 90% when the animal becomes human food. Massive energy loss.
Exactly. That same piece of land used for meat production can support far fewer people compared to using it for direct plant consumption.
So diets based more on plants are more sustainable for large populations.
From an energy and resource perspective, absolutely. It allows more people to be fed from the available agricultural land. That's why plant-based diets are so central to discussions about food security and environmental sustainability, especially in densely populated regions. It's a direct consequence of the 10% law.
Fascinating connection.
Now, we've talked about food chains as simple lines, but nature isn't usually that neat, is it?
No, I guess animals eat more than one thing.
Exactly. Most organisms eat and are eaten by multiple other types of organisms. So instead of a single straight line, the feeding relationships form a complex network. Lots of interconnected lines branching out. We call this a food web.
A web instead of a chain, like a tangled net.
Kind of. Think of it as multiple food chains woven together. And why is this important? Stability, resilience. In a simple chain, A eats B, B eats C. If B disappears, A starves. Very fragile. But in a food web, if one food source becomes scarce, the consumer often has other options. It can switch to eating something else that's available in the web.
So it provides backup options, makes the system stronger.
Exactly. It makes the ecosystem more resilient to disturbances. If one population declines, the whole system doesn't necessarily collapse because there are alternative pathways for energy flow. Interconnectedness equals stability.
Okay, food webs provide resilience.
Now, here's a topic that links food chains directly to human health and environmental pollution. It's called biological magnification, sometimes called biomagnification.
Biological magnification. Sounds serious.
It can be. It's about how certain harmful chemicals can build up in organisms as you move up the food chain. Where do these chemicals come from? Often pesticides used in agriculture.
To protect crops.
Yes, farmers use them to kill pests. But these chemicals don't just disappear. They can get washed off the crops by rain or irrigation into the soil or nearby water bodies like rivers and lakes. From the soil, plants absorb them along with water and nutrients. From the water, aquatic plants or animals absorb them. This is how they get into the food chain, right at the bottom, at the producer or primary consumer level.
And the problem is?
The problem is many of these synthetic pesticides are non-biodegradable. Our bodies and the bodies of other organisms don't have the enzymes to break them down or get rid of them easily. They're designed to persist.
So they just stay inside, accumulate.
Exactly. They get stored, often in fatty tissues. Now imagine, a small insect eats a plant sprayed with pesticide. It accumulates a tiny amount. Then a frog eats lots of those insects over its lifetime. All the pesticide from all those insects builds up in the frog to a higher concentration.
Okay, it's concentrating up the chain.
Precisely. Then a snake eats many frogs. The pesticide concentrates further in the snake. Then an eagle eats many snakes. The concentration gets higher and higher at each trophic level. This phenomenon, the increasing concentration of these persistent chemicals at successive trophic levels, is biological magnification.
Wow, so the top predators end up with the highest dose.
Exactly. And who is often at the top of many food chains.
Us, humans.
Right. We eat plants, we eat herbivores, we eat carnivores sometimes. So the maximum concentration of these chemicals can end up accumulating in our bodies.
That's worrying. Are we talking dangerous levels?
It can be. This is why you hear about pesticide residues in our food. Wheat, rice, fruits, vegetables, even meat. They contain varying amounts. And importantly, washing might not remove it all, especially if it's absorbed into the food tissue.
This is quite alarming. So is there anything we as individuals can actually do to minimize our intake of these chemicals? Or is it just something the government needs to fix by regulating pesticides? I remember an activity mentioned about this.
That's a very practical and crucial question. It links directly to our choices and responsibilities. And yes, while government policy and regulation are absolutely essential, banning the worst chemicals, promoting safer farming individuals aren't powerless. Think about solutions for exams.
Yeah.
What can you do?
Maybe choose organic food, since it's grown without synthetic pesticides.
That's a big one. Choosing certified organic produce directly reduces your exposure and supports farming methods that avoid these chemicals. It can be more expensive, but it's a direct action. What else?
Washing food really well. You said it might not remove everything, but maybe it helps.
It can help reduce surface residues, definitely. Thorough washing, scrubbing, sometimes peeling fruits and vegetables is a good practice. It won't eliminate systemic pesticides absorbed inside, but it reduces surface contamination.
Okay. What about supporting local farmers who use fewer chemicals?
Excellent point. Supporting farmers using sustainable methods like integrated pest management, IPM, which uses biological controls and minimizes chemical use, encourages better practices. Consumer demand drives change.
Diversifying the diet, maybe? So you don't get too much of one specific pesticide if it's high in one food.
Another good strategy, eating a variety of foods can spread out potential exposure risks.
And maybe growing some of your own food, if possible, even in pots.
Absolutely. Even a small balcony garden gives you control over what goes into your food. So yes, while it's a complex problem needing systemic solutions, individual choices promoting organic, washing food, supporting sustainable farming, diversifying diet, growing your own mouth, they all contribute. Being an informed consumer matters. Okay, let's shift gears now to two other major environmental issues caused directly by human activities. These are huge topics for exams and for understanding our world. First, the depletion of the ozone layer. Second, managing the garbage we produce.
Ozone layer. I've heard about the ozone hole. What exactly is ozone?
Good question. Ozone is a molecule with the chemical formula O3. That means 3 oxygen atoms bonded together. It's different from the oxygen we breathe, which is O2, 2 atoms.
Okay, O3 versus O2.
And here's the twist. Down here near the ground, ozone, O3, is actually harmful. It's a pollutant, a component of smog. Bad for our lungs, bad for plants. Deadly poison, really.
Poisonous down here. But I thought it protected us.
Ah, yes. Its role changes completely depending on where it is. High up in the atmosphere, in a layer called the stratosphere, roughly 15 to 50 kilometers up, ozone plays a vital protective role. It forms the ozone layer, which acts like a natural sunscreen for the Earth. It shields us from most of the harmful ultraviolet UV radiation coming from the sun.
UV radiation. That's the stuff that causes sunburn, right?
Yes, and much worse. Too much UV exposure can cause skin cancer, cataracts in our eyes, and weaken our immune systems. It's damaging to plants and other organisms, too.
So the ozone layer stops most of that harmful UV.
Exactly, it absorbs it. Life on Earth depends on this shield. How does it form up there naturally? Well, high-energy UV rays from the sun actually break apart normal oxygen molecules, O2, into single, highly reactive oxygen atoms. These single O atoms then quickly bump into and combine with other O2 molecules to form ozone, O3. So O plus O2, air O3. It's a continuous cycle of formation and breakdown, keeping a natural balance.
Okay, so it's naturally made and destroyed up there. What went wrong? Why did it start depleting?
The problem really became clear in the 1980s. Scientists noticed a sharp drop in ozone levels, especially over Antarctica, the ozone hole. And the culprits were identified as synthetic chemicals, mainly chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs.
CFCs? Weren't those used in refrigerators and spray cans?
Exactly. They were used everywhere as coolants in fridges and air conditioners, as propellants in aerosols and making foams, even in fire extinguishers. They seemed perfect, stable, non-toxic down here.
So how do they damage the ozone layer way up there?
Because they are so stable, they don't break down near the ground. They slowly drift up into the stratosphere. Up there, the intense UV radiation finally breaks the CFC molecules apart, releasing chlorine atoms. And here's the killer part. A single chlorine atom acts like a catalyst. It can destroy thousands and thousands of ozone molecules, O3, before it's eventually removed.
Wow, one chlorine atom does that much damage.
Yes, it sets off a chain reaction, breaking down O3 much faster than it can be naturally reformed. This disrupted the balance and caused the ozone layer to thin out drastically.
That sounds really bad. What did the world do about it?
This is actually a major environmental success story. The global community came together. In 1987, under the United Nations Environment Program, UNEP, countries signed the Montreal Protocol. It was a landmark international agreement to phase out the production and use of CFCs and other ozone-depleting substances.
An international treaty. Did it work?
Yes, it's considered one of the most successful international environmental agreements ever. Countries agreed to freeze CFC production and then cut it back dramatically. Now, manufacturing companies worldwide have to use CFC-free alternatives in refrigerators, ACs, etc.
That's incredible. It gives me some hope. So, did these efforts actually work, Guruji? Has the ozone hole started to shrink, or is the damage already done and it's too late? I've always wondered about the actual outcome.
That's the really encouraging part. Yes, the Montreal Protocol and the global efforts have worked remarkably well. It's a fantastic example of what can be achieved when science informs policy and nations cooperate. The ozone layer is healing. It's a slow process. Mind you, it will likely take until the middle or latter part of the century to fully recover to pre-1980 levels.
So it takes time, but it is recovering.
Definitely. Satellite data shows that the ozone hole over Antarctica has generally stabilized and is showing clear signs of shrinking. The levels of ozone-depleting chemicals in the atmosphere are steadily decreasing.
Wow, that's genuinely good news.
It is. It shows that we can tackle huge global environmental problems if we act decisively and collectively. It proves that damage isn't always irreversible if we change our ways. A real success story.
Okay, that's reassuring. Now, what about the other big problem? Garbage.
Ah, yes. Managing the garbage we produce. A challenge we face every single day, especially in densely populated places like India. Think about it. Our daily lives generate so much waste material that just gets thrown away. You see it everywhere. Overflowing bins, litter on streets, dump sites near towns and cities.
Yeah, it's a huge problem.
To manage it, we first need to understand the different types of waste based on how they break down. This is crucial for exams and for real solutions. We classify waste into two main categories, biodegradable and non-biodegradable.
Okay, biodegradable and non-biodegradable. What's the difference?
Yeah. Biodegradable substances are those that can be broken down by natural biological processes. Basically, microorganisms like bacteria and fungi have the right enzymes to decompose these materials back into simpler substances.
Like food waste, vegetable peels, paper.
Exactly. Kitchen scraps, fruit peels, leftover food, tea leaves, paper, cotton clothes, wood. These things rot or decay naturally over time, becoming part of the soil again. Then you have non-biodegradable substances. These are materials that natural biological processes cannot break down easily. Why? Because they are often synthetic, human-made materials like plastics. The microbes simply don't have the right enzymes for their complex structures.
So they just stick around. For how long?
For a very, very long time. They persist in the environment. Plastics, for example, can last for hundreds, even thousands of years. Other examples include glass bottles, metal cans, synthetic fabrics, styrofoam, most electronic waste components. They don't rot away.
Right, plastic seems to be the biggest problem there.
It's a major component, yes. And our modern lifestyles have made the problem worse. We generate much more waste now than previous generations. Think about packaging. Everything seems wrapped in plastic, and the use and throw culture.
Disposable items everywhere.
Exactly. More disposable items, more non-biodegradable packaging. It all adds up, changing the very nature of our waste. So the exam question becomes, what's the impact of all this, especially the non-biodegradable stuff, on our environment?
That's a really clear distinction between the two types of waste. So what are the specific problems caused by these non-biodegradable wastes that we generate, apart from just accumulating? Like, how do they directly harm the environment and perhaps even us? Thinking beyond just being an eyesore.
Excellent question. The impacts are severe and multifaceted, much more than just looking messy. Understanding these specific harms is key. First, land pollution and landfills. Because they don't break down, non-biodegradable waste piles up in landfills. These take up huge amounts of land, often land that could be used for farming or housing. They become breeding grounds for pests and diseases like flies and rats, posing health risks.
Okay, so they take up space and attract pests.
Second, water pollution. Waste often ends up in rivers, lakes, oceans. Plastics float, block sunlight for aquatic plants, harming the food web. Worse, plastics break down into tiny microplastics.
Microplastics, I've heard about those.
Yes, tiny particles that get into the water, eaten by fish and other marine life, and then potentially by us when we eat seafood. The long-term health effects are still being studied, but it's a major concern. Also, toxic liquid called leachate can seep from landfills and poison groundwater.
Contaminating drinking water sources.
Potentially, yes. Third, soil pollution. Plastics in soil can block water and air from reaching plant roots, reducing fertility. Chemicals in the plastics can also leach out and contaminate the soil. Fourth, harm to wildlife. This is heartbreakingly common. Animals mistake plastic for food.
Like cows eating plastic bags.
Exactly. A common sight in India, unfortunately. It blocks their insides, leading to suffering and death. Marine animals get entangled in plastic nets or debris and drown or starve.
It's terrible.
Fifth, air pollution if you burn it. Burning plastics, especially certain types, releases toxic fumes like dioxins, which are incredibly harmful to breathe and contribute to serious health problems and air pollution.
So burning isn't a good solution either.
Generally not, unless done in highly controlled incinerators with pollution controls, which are expensive. And finally, yes, aesthetic damage. It just makes our beautiful landscapes and cities look polluted and unpleasant.
So landfills, water pollution, microplastics, soil damage, harm to animals, air pollution, it's a whole range of serious problems.
It really is, which is why managing this waste properly is so critical. Let's look at a really relatable Indian example that shows how choices matter. Disposable cups in trains.
Oh yeah, I remember using different kinds over the years.
Exactly. Your parents might remember when tea was served in reusable plastic glasses. You gave them back to be washed. Simple, reusable.
Right. Then came the plastic cups.
Yes, disposable plastic cups. Hailed for hygiene, everyone gets a clean cup. But nobody really thought about the sheer volume. Millions of these non-biodegradable cups being thrown out every single day across the country. Huge waste problem.
Piling up somewhere.
Then someone suggested Kulhad's traditional clay cups.
Ah, the earthen cups. They seem eco-friendly, right? They break down.
They are biodegradable, yes, made from natural material. Seem perfect. But think about the scale. To make millions of Kulhads daily, you need vast amounts of clay. Where does clay come from?
From the earth, the topsoil.
Exactly. Fertile topsoil, which we need for farming. Making Kulhads on that massive scale would lead to significant soil erosion and loss of agricultural land. Solved one problem, created another.
Wow. An unintended consequence.
A classic example. It shows you need to think about the whole life cycle. So now, what do you often see? Disposable paper cups.
Right. Paper cups are common now. Are they better?
Generally considered better than plastic because paper is mostly biodegradable. They break down much faster.
But not perfect either.
Not perfect. Making paper uses trees, energy, water, and many paper cups have a thin plastic lining to make them waterproof, which complicates recycling and decomposition. But still, their end-of-life impact is usually less severe than persistent plastic.
It's complex. No easy answers.
It often is. And this links to broader waste management issues. How do we treat sewage so it doesn't pollute rivers? How do industries treat their hazardous waste? How do we handle e-waste old phones, computers with their toxic materials like lead and mercury? And how effective is plastic recycling itself? These are all parts of the bigger puzzle.
Given all these challenges, Guruji, it feels a bit overwhelming sometimes. What are two practical ways we as individuals can help in reducing the problem of waste disposal? Something actionable we can do daily and maybe mention in exams.
Excellent question. Focusing on solutions is key. The guiding principle is the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. Based on that, here are 2 very practical and effective things everyone can do. 1, reduce waste generation at the source. This is the best approach. Stop waste before it even starts.
Oh, like refusing plastic bags.
Exactly. Carry your own cloth bag for shopping, a simple habit with a big impact. Avoid buying things with excessive packaging. Choose loose vegetables instead of prepackaged ones.
Use reusable water bottles instead of buying plastic ones.
Perfect example. Use reusable containers for food. Choose durable items over disposable ones. It's about making conscious choices to consume less and generate less waste in the first place. Reduce. 2, segregate waste at source. This means separating your waste at home.
Putting wet waste in one bin and dry waste in another, like kitchen waste versus plastics.
Precisely. Keep biodegradable waste, kitchen scraps, peels, separate from non-biodegradable waste, plastics, glass, metal, paper. Why is this so important?
It helps with recycling and composting.
Exactly. The clean biodegradable waste can be easily composted, turning it into valuable manure. The segregated non-biodegradable waste, plastic, paper, metal, glass, can be sent for recycling much more efficiently. If it's all mixed up, it's much harder and more expensive to sort and often just ends up dumped.
So separating at home makes the whole system work better.
Immensely better. It helps the municipal corporations or panchayats manage waste effectively, recycle resources, and reduce the burden on landfills. Segregation is key.
Yeah. Reduce and segregate. Those are concrete actions.
They are. Small changes in our habits and attitudes, when collectively, can make a massive difference to this environmental challenge. So let's quickly wrap up the main points from our deep dive today. We saw that ecosystems are all about the interdependence between living, biotic, and non-living, abiotic components. Producers form the base, capturing energy. Energy flows through trophic levels, but with significant loss at each step. Remember the 10% law limiting food chain length.
Right, and food webs provide stability.
Exactly. We also looked hard at human impacts. The danger of biological magnification of chemicals in food chains, the vital role of the ozone layer, and the threat from CFCs. and the success of the Montreal Protocol, and the huge challenge of managing our waste, distinguishing between biodegradable and non-biodegradable materials.
And the importance of reducing and segregating waste.
Absolutely. Now, for your exams boards or competitive ones, remember these tips. Know your definitions. Ecosystem, trophic level, biomagnification, biodegradable, non-biodegradable, be precise. Practice energy flow. Draw food chain webs. Apply the 10% law. Understand its consequences. Focus on why and how. Why is ozone depletion bad? How do CFCs cause it? What was the solution? Why is non-biodegradable waste a problem? How does it harm?
Understand the mechanisms.
Yes. Connect to current issues. Especially for UPSC PSCs, link these concepts to current environmental news in India and globally. Think solutions. Be ready to suggest practical ways to manage waste or protect the environment. And visualize. Try to picture these processes: energy flow, decomposition, ozone chemistry. It aids understanding and memory.
Thank you so much, Guruji. This deep dive has made our environment incredibly clear and relevant. I feel much more confident about tackling this chapter for my exams and understanding its real-world importance. The examples and the exam connections really helped.
Excellent. I'm glad it was helpful. You've definitely got the key ideas. Keep observing the environment around you, keep asking questions, and keep learning. Understanding this isn't just about passing exams. It's about being an informed citizen who can contribute to a healthier planet. All the very best with your studies.